There's another theory called the symbolic theory, and that's basically about how people give meaning to symbols and small interactions. Can you think of something in everyday life, like a handshake or a flag, that holds a lot of meaning?
Yeah, certainly. In my own case, I'm a part of the Greek community, the Divine Nine community. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and we have a hand signal that we use that identify us that way. And outside of that hand signal, that's a little bit more public. There are secret symbols that signs that we share with each other that signify us as members of the organization, and that's special just to us. So it's a way of us identifying other
Mm.
members without them telling us they're members.
Well, since you said something about identity, that kind of ties with the looking glass self theory, which is the idea that we see ourselves the way we think others see us. So, do you think people's identities are shaped a lot by what others think of them?
Yes, I think that they are. I think that in this society that we're currently in, is so social media driven.
Right.
We look at a lot of images on and through social media that make us strive for levels of status and identity that is probably not so true. You can kind of be anybody online, right?
Right.
So, the person goes online, a young person like yourself at 15, 16, and they see their friends in Dubai, and they see their friends in the Caribbean, and they see their friends on the passenger side of a Lambo, and they see their friends, in the latest drip. Um, who knows where that stuff came from? Who knows how those opportunities came about? If you're constantly striving to try and keep up with the Joneses, per se, you may not be living your own best life. The flip side of that is we tend to be very hard on ourselves, or can be extremely, extremely hard on ourselves, and people could be looking at us in ways where they are envious of us when we are downing ourselves.
Right. I mean, all those things you talked about just make up what culture is, which is just the shared values and rules people live by. But even inside a big culture, there are subcultures like gamers or athletes or artists who have their own style.
Mm-hmm.
What's a subculture you've noticed? Like, for example, it could be the Greek life, you know?
Yeah, the D9, the Greek organizations, Black Greek organizations would certainly be a subsector. Another subsector that's really prevalent, has been through history, but certainly is right now, is our two our two political parties,
All right.
Republican Party, Democratic Party. Subsectors based on religion, subsectors based on um, uh, you know, musical taste. Even we recently had the I was about to say the blues festival, the folk festival here in Greensboro. So you've got followers of subsections of groups of people who follow folk music, who follow rap music, who follow R&B music. Um, but yeah, too many subsections of
So,
people that make up groups in today's society.
so as there's a lot that make up subcultures that make a lot through society, there's also countercultures where people go against the main culture on purpose.
Mm.
Like thinking like the Black Panthers who went against that normal culture
Mm-hmm.
that was invented through, America.
Yep.
So can you think of like any other groups that might be like that?
Well, we just talked about the political parties a
Right.
second ago, and historically, the Democratic Party, excuse me, has been heavily influenced or made up of folks from the African American community. I just had this conversation literally a couple of hours ago. I've got a close friend that I grew up with, African American, um, who is a stark Republican,
Mm.
and completely has gone against the grain of even how she was raised as a Democrat when she reached the point of voting age. And at a point decided that she didn't follow those people, those beliefs, those ideals anymore, and was more in line with the thinking and the ideals of members of the Republican Party.
Mm, that's that's cool. So there's also a high culture, which is the elite stuff like opera, classical art, or luxury brands. Do you think that kind of culture influences regular people?
Absolutely. I can go back again. We
Yeah, where
mentioned
you said,
yeah,
you talked about how like the looking glass theory
Yeah.
of like looking at people in like Lambos and things of that nature.
and thinking it's real.
Right.
And or you mentioned high end brands and that sort of thing. So it goes along with that as well. People going out and spending $4, $5, $6, $10,000 on a LV bag or Gucci purse or Louis Vuitton purse, because they feel like it elevates their status in some way. And that's been an issue of us in the Black community. You haven't heard the term, you wouldn't be old enough to hear it, but in slave culture, the one day of the week that people could kind of dress up a little bit in what they had, which wasn't very good, but they could dress up a little bit, was on Sunday to go to church. So that's where the term Sunday best came from. So we are a community that still pursues looking and presenting ourselves a certain way as a symbol of our status.
Okay. Well, talking about status, sometimes powerful cultures push their way onto others. That's called cultural imperialism. Can you think of times when one culture takes over or kind of overshadows another?
Yeah, we've been dealing with that in this country forever.
True.
Kind of brought here, not kind of brought here, we brought here our ancestors against their will, stripped of their names, stripped of their religion, stripped of their ideals, stripped of their wealth, which some of them had in African culture, and have been under the thumb, essentially, of majority culture here in America since that time.
Well, I think that kind of also ties into ethnocentrism, which is when people judge another culture by their own standards, which I feel like kind of ties into kind of like the white culture versus black culture type of thing.
Yeah, I think that with that, as you explained it and mentioned it, I would say there's some pieces of majority culture, or there are members of majority culture that look negatively upon the African American community as something less than in comparison to their culture. One of the areas that is really interesting is the makeup and beauty industry, right? So again, kind of being under the thumb of majority culture, there is an ideal of what even black beauty is supposed to look like. And unfortunately, a lot of people look at beauty in women and men, I guess, from the standards of white features or Anglo-Saxon features. And
many like black women go to like different countries, get like nose jobs to thin their noses.
Nose jobs to thin noses, and and other forms of plastic surgery. It's become much more acceptable. But even weaves and wigs with long hair, because that was considered again. More white beauty than it was necessarily black beauty, where our hair is, in for many people, just through DNA, is a more kinky texture. What's beautiful now is that finally more people in our community are seeing the beauty in ourselves, in our ancestry, and not looking at it in comparison to what the white standards of beauty are supposed to be.
Well, thank you. This was all great insight. And I just want to say thank you for this conversation.
Thank you too, son. It was interesting. You stretched my brain this afternoon.
All right.